What's up, everyone, and welcome back to First and 15 Fantasy Football Podcast. This is Injury Outlook with your host, Dr. Carlos Reyes. And today we're actually going to be getting into Carolina Panthers rookie running back Jonathan Brooks. You know, Jonathan Brooks was poised to have a big year, but then suffered an ACL tear back in November of 2023. The Carolina Panthers actually traded up to the 46th overall pick and selected him in the second round. But again, that torn ACL threw a wrench in those plans and kind of, made it a significant effect on what his outlook would be for this coming season. So can Brooks kind of bounce back and become a fantasy football asset for 2024? Let's kind of break it down. You know, an ACL tears specifically in a running back is a significant injury to have, particularly if that's what you're going to be starting off in the NFL with. Now, when we look at the ACL is a main stabilizer in specifically moving the tibia, keeping the tibia in place while you're moving and cutting and jumping and sprinting. The ACL, as we recall from other injuries, takes anywhere between 9 to 12 months for it to recover fully. Now, fully doesn't mean that it is completely healed. It just means that it is up to a point now, up to a speed that it can tolerate some of these high level activities. And in most cases, some surgeons will not allow release to sport specific drills and training later than 9 months. And if you look at some of the latest research, it ranges between 20 to 25% re-injury rate if you do return him before 9 months. Now, he has to pass other tests specifically with your athletic trainer, your sports physical therapist, the strength conditioning staff. They all have to take him through particular tests that they must pass, and they must meet milestones in order to then progress to your sport specific drills and then to your team drills accordingly. Now, when you're looking at his timeline, Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL in November. He then had surgery in early December. And so we're looking at 8 to 9 months later where we feel comfortable that he can return to some of these sport specific drills. That's anywhere between August and September. Now we're looking at training camp and practice during that time already. And so you can expect that they're going to slowly ramp up his workload and his participation level depending on how well he's performing, how well he's responding, and has he passed all these tests accordingly with the staff that we just mentioned. Now, the good news is that Jonathan Brooks did have just an ACL tear. There was no collateral damage. There's no multi-ligament injury, which would then make the return a little bit more cloudy and the health outlook of that a little bit more muddy. But since he did have only an ACL tear, that's a really good thing for Jonathan Brooks moving forward. Somebody that I like to compare him to is somebody like Breece Hall. Now, Breece Hall had a different timeline, but you can expect some of that same kind of active workload depending on how well he responds. And it is all based on an individual. Every individual is different. Jonathan Brooks' progression will be different, but you can have at least a timeline to expect with that specifically. Now, let's look at his fantasy outlook. You know, the upside for Jonathan Brooks is he's very talented, right? He's a very great pass catcher, great running backs, got great vision. Highly touted running back from the University of Texas, was doing very well up until he tore his ACL. And so he has and screams potential running back one upside if he was to regain his full explosiveness and full health throughout the season without any setbacks. The downside to that is there's still risk, like we talked about earlier. There's a 20 to 25% of re-injury rate to that same knee or the opposite knee within that time of 9 to 12 months as you're returning to your participation of that sport. And NFL being a high-level sport, there's a risk for that specifically because of that high level intensities of the sport itself. Now, the verdict is Brooks is we call a high reward, moderate risk play here. In best ball right now, he's going about 8th round, and he's about running back 31 overall. But if you're looking at most of your best ball tournaments, your leagues, and these best ball manias, The most important weeks for that league are weeks 14 and beyond. And so you can expect, or I can expect, and I will expect that they ramp it up slowly. So he's going to have a slow start, but he's going to be a strong finisher. And that's a huge upside for Jonathan Brooks, specifically because of his talent. And so what I would do is draft him with a mid-round selection and then just kind of follow it up with Hubbard in your late rounds. He's got a very good situation moving into Carolina. He's only got Hubbard and Sanders to be cognizant about, and we already know what to expect out of Hubbard and Sanders. I would say Jonathan Brooks is a top tier above those two if he was to regain his full health and his full explosiveness. So keep a close eye on Jonathan Brooks as training camp rolls around. Keep a close eye on the participation level, the workload. He's going to be within that time limit of the training camp. He's already stated that he's already returned to running. He's already cleared to do some cutting drills. He's mentioned how well he feels. The Carolina Panthers have mentioned how well he feels. And so he has not had any significant setbacks specifically. So just keep a close eye on as training camp rolls around. But Jonathan Brooks has the talent to be a fantastic fantasy force for 2024. While the injury adds an element of risk, the positive is that he's got really good positive recovery signs, and the situation in Carolina makes him an intriguing option specifically. But stay tuned for First and 15 Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure you're checking out AB, Dale, and Chris, going over a lot of key redraft and draft strategies out there for multiple leagues, and giving you some fantastic information on key players for your 2024 Fantasy Football League.